Hey guys, Pete here. We're going to try this again. This will be the live stream for the Expanse Season 6, Episode 3. It's a chance to take a deeper look at the episode and get into some things that I don't get a chance to look at in my recap. Take a closer look, dig deeper, have a discussion, and hopefully answer some questions from the chat. I'm joined again today by Benja from Benja TV channel. You want to say hello?
Hi guys, good to be here again.
And we're going to be talking about all things Expanse. We'll get into the episode Force Projection, the book the show's based on, Babylon's Ashes, and the X-ray episode Win or Lose, but we won't be giving away any spoilers beyond this episode 3. And I think we can jump right into it from there. Why don't we start with the Amos and Bobbie mini episode?
Yeah, this one was titled Win or Lose. This is one of the X-ray episodes. This one also starts with a voiceover, as Amos says, the doctrine of one ship encompasses both tension and resolution. And Bobbie goes, with no favor to either. Conflict and acceptance unified into something greater. We had these quotes at the beginning of every single episode of these X-ray episodes. And what do you think about this one, Pete?
Well, as far as the quote, I find these pretty fascinating because this doctrine of the one ship is like the belter thing, and so it's interesting to see different things, how they're applying that to these different characters. I'm not exactly sure where they're going with it still, but as far as the X-ray scene overall, I think this is the best kind of fan service. You know what I mean? Like, you can't go wrong. You put these two characters in a room together, and I thought that this was probably the best one, even though it contributed the least to actually what was going on in the story. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and to explain the scene a little bit, because people might not have seen it, since it's a bonus episode. Amos and Bobbie are cleaning up the cargo hold, and they have a back and forth. They're messing with each other. They both get in some good ones, and it escalates to a challenge because both of these characters are alphas. Bobbie suggests a simple game. First one who hits the deck loses, and the loser has to clean up the rest by themselves. So it's like a little wager. Amos says, let's go over the rules. And he does this to distract Bobbie, and he makes his move. But Bobbie, you know her. She doesn't buy it. She easily puts him into a sleeper hold and starts choking him out. Amos looks like he's gonna just pass out. He struggles, but he's eventually able to get out his hand terminal to set off an alarm that causes Bobbie to let go because she is distracted, which is how Amos slams Bobbie to the floor and wins. And I thought that was just, I noticed that Wes Chatham had a writing credit here, and I think he came up with this ending himself. What do you think?
Yeah, they mentioned this. They talked about it a little bit on the last podcast, I think, is where I heard that. And it's cool that they gave him that chance. He's definitely interested in writing. He does the podcast with Ty, and yeah, I think that I think that you can kind of see that it's a little bit different, and it's kind of in his voice as the character. I thought there was a lot of great little lines here, and I really like the idea of them. They're saying things that to anyone else, that would be completely crossing the line, but they're just sort of testing each other, and they let it go until they find this idea, to where they can actually make it count. I mean, who can get who to the ground or whatever. And I think my favorite line was when she's telling him, hey, don't worry, it's going to be over soon. And she says, it's almost nappy time. I think that's probably my favorite. But the remember when the Earth had a blue sky, and he comes back, remember when Mars had 2 moons. I liked how they are casually mentioning details from the early episodes in the early seasons in their conversations. She says, the Donnie here, and earlier they talk, or later in the episode, they talk about the Cant, and that Two Moons quote. I remembered that scene whenever she first came onto the Roci back in season 3. Whenever she brings Avasarala in and she's injured. And a little bit later, she realizes that somebody messed with the flag. And of course, we know that was Amos. So I thought that was just those little things that are in the dialogue. They're totally natural. It's not like, hey, remember this when this happened? But it's great at the end of a final season of a show where all of that stuff is already in your mind, and they can pull on those little things to add a little bit to everything.
Yeah, and I think this scene also shows how far Bobbie has come, because, as you pointed out earlier in the series, in season 3 and in earlier seasons, Bobbie was, the perfect Martian soldier. But she has become disillusioned with the Martian army and the planet in general. And she can take a joke now, because can you even imagine what would happen if Amos made these kinds of jokes back in season 3? There would be a real fight that time around.
Yeah, it would. She would have commandeered the ship, which she already thought was stolen from the Martians in the first place, and she would have been driving it back with them all hogtied in the cargo hold for sure.
And when you compare this X-ray episode to the first two, where do you put it? I think this one is my favorite because it was so much different than the actual episodes. But what do you think?
Yeah, I think that it would be hard. I think that's my favorite so far, and also that it'll be hard to top. I don't know how they'll, where you go from here, but I mean, like I said, I think what's cool about it is that it's a little bit different in that it's just fun. You know what I mean? It's not that consequential. It's just however many minutes long it was of two great characters making you remember the journey that they were on to get where they're at, and doing something that's completely entertaining.
Yeah, like I said last week, these feel like extra scenes or deleted scenes from DVDs. So I always like those. I always watch those after I finish the season. And this is like a nice flashback. I think we can move on to Laconia, because the episode opens up with a close-up look at the orbital platforms as a drop shuttle returns to the planet. I couldn't really figure out where that drop shuttle was coming from, to be honest, and what that orbital platform was. Do you have any insight into that?
Yeah, well, I mean, for the non-spoiler explanation, this is something that's in orbit around the planet Laconia. They knew it was there before they chose this system.
And we see this. This is the one we see at the start of the season, right?
Yeah, we saw it for the first time on the ship whenever what's his name?
Sauveterre? Was it?
Cortazar. Cortazar was talking to them on the ship. You could see it in the sky in the background. And then you saw it in the closing credits. So in the beginning, you're just seeing it you're seeing a shuttle leaving that, going back down to the planet's surface. Someone was visiting the platform, doing something. You have no idea what it was, but they're going back down to the planet at this point.
Yeah, and then we see, this scene right here. There's a classroom with a Martian soldier talking to the kids. He makes a pretty clear distinction between the survey group who was already at the planet before they arrived. So Kara's family was a part of this. And then there was the group from Mars that came after. He says that the people who have been there longer can help those who arrived after by telling them if they notice anything different. And as we know, Kara has noticed something different, the strange dog. So Kara is looking at her device, looking up how to keep the baby sunbirds alive, and the soldier notices this and approaches Kara. So, what did you think about this scene? And what do you think about this distinction between the two groups at this planet, on this planet?
I think that as far as the distinction is, I think that's one of the things you need to pay attention to. They're mentioning it for a reason, I guess. So whenever what happened at the end of season 5 is that pretty much all of the Martian breakaway fleet, except for the Barkeith, made it through the ring gate and transited to the Laconia system. So all of that Martian military and all of that personnel went through, and these people, Kara's family and the group that she was with, they're all scientists. They were there. And you heard in the last episode when they were talking about the relays, like basically they shut everything down. So now these people are living on this planet, and these soldiers came in and took it over, and they don't really have a choice. You know, what are they going to do? They have no power in the situation. And so the distinction with that is that this is an occupied planet now that they happen to be on, and they don't really have any say in how things go from here. And they can't talk back to, they can't get a hold of Earth. The relays are turned off. So it's kind of a messed up situation for them.
Yeah, and what's especially messed up is this Martian guy talking to these kids without their parents present, because I guess he's like their teacher. I don't know what's going on here. I don't know if this is a classroom.
I think that's the what they're trying to show is that they're just taking over. Now you go to school, you go to Martian soldier school,
Yeah, and another kid going to school is Zan. Is that how you say his name? Kara's brother.
Yes, Zan, like Alexander. Yeah.
Yeah, Zan is going to play soccer after school. I want to say football. This word is foreign to me. Anyway, Kara's thinking about the birds and tells him to stop following her because, Zan has been really curious about what Kara's been up to. And when Kara returns to the glade, she finds the drone, which was broken, and now realizes it's been fixed. What could have done this, she thinks. And as she activates the drone, she hears the strange dog and sees that it's watching her. Then she hears the mother bird, who is again taking care of her babies, and she says, "You fixed her." She says this to the strange dog. Apparently, this strange dog is a magical creature. I'm not saying magical literally, but it's fixed, a living thing, and also the drone. I think this is one of the best moments of the season so far, because I've been wondering where this Laconia storyline was going, and apparently this magical creature can fix things. The implications of this are massive. I suppose you know a lot more about this than you can really discuss here, but how did this moment feel for you when when you saw Kara realize what the strange dogs were capable of?
I thought they handled it pretty well. I thought that it was, like I said, this is a mysterious book in the way that it's you don't really know anything that's going on. So it's a little tough to adapt it in the beginning of every episode because people wonder where is it going. So now we kind of hit the point of everything set up, and now you can see, and what I like about this whole situation is it's from the perspective of an 8-year-old kid. If an adult sees something like this, they're going to think about it totally in a different way. And it's funny because a lot of people have been saying in the comments and things like, why are these kids allowed to just run around on this planet? And I never even thought about that when I read the book. Just, I figured they're on this planet. There's not that many people here. she goes out to play like I did when I was a kid or whatever. It just happens to be on this thing. But yeah, I think what's really interesting is the fact that it comes down through an 8-year-old kid's eyes. She's the one that experiences this. And, the soldier asks, have you been noticing something that's been happening, especially in the last few weeks? And so I think you can put it together that what he's talking about there is he's talking about since they brought the protomolecule through the ring gate. You know what I mean? They're wondering because you remember obviously you remember what happened in season 4 when they went to Illis, but you will remember that in the whenever Alex and Lieutenant Babbage went out for dinner, he thought they were going to like hook up or whatever. He's all interested in her, but the only thing she wanted to pay attention to was what happened when they brought that protomolecule to Illis. So I thought, those are the kind of things that are what should be standing out at this point. And I wanted to ask a non-book reader here, like, what are you starting to put together? Like, is there a theory going on? Obviously, you said this one felt like it was one of the better, but is this where do you think this is all going now, that since you have no idea?
I mean, it's quite hard to figure it out, but it's obviously got some either healing powers, or I'm not sure if it's got healing powers or if it turns these creatures or devices into something else, if they become a hybrid of sorts. I'm not sure about that part yet. So this mother bird, the strange dog fixed, is not the same. It's got some different parts. So apparently,
yeah, you could see that much from just what you can see on the screen, right?
Yeah, exactly. And that's why I'm still curious about where they're going to go with this. Because if this was just a magical process where they were resurrected, that would be really weird. But this other stuff, this stuff on the bird, that fascinates me because I want to immediately see how the strange dog does it. I could just pick up the books and read, but I'm gonna be patient and see how it turns out on the show, I guess. And I wanted to ask you if you think they will, show this process on the show, or if they're gonna leave it for a possible future series or movie.
Well, yeah, it's not something that becomes apparent by the end of the Strange Dogs book.
No.
Like, it's one of those things where, as you correctly guessed, it's not magic. There's no magic involved. This is still the Expanse universe. So it is something that you'll understand why it's happening, I guess, but not how it happens. I think that's the best that I could say about that. And I wanted to mention this super chat that we had here. TM Martin Esquire, thank you for the super chat. Hello, how would you rank this season 6 episode 3 battle scene compared to the entire series so far? So it's a little bit of a divergence, but I'm not really big on ranking things in general. It's one of those things that I have a real recency bias with just about whatever I just watched is usually the thing that I like the best, if I'm being honest. So, you know what I mean? Yeah, I think technically it was amazing. I think as far as, and I thought about this because a lot of people have been talking about it. I still think the one that knocked my socks off the most was the Thoth Station raid whenever they go against the stealth ship. This looks better in many ways, but that was sort of the first one that really I was like, wow, this show is actually serious about thinking about how this stuff works, and they really pulled that off. What did you think?
I'm like you because I'm not big on rewatching shows, especially if they're not sci-fi shows. So I rewatched The Expanse because it is a sci-fi show. Normally I don't. And I think I rewatched The Expanse only once or maybe twice. I might have watched the first 3 seasons 2 times, but anyway, I, I'm not sure how to rank these really because, like you said, they are different types of encounters. Here it's 3-on-1, so the stakes are a little bit higher because it is also Marco, and Alex is not here. Holden has to command the ship while this is going on. He has to pilot the ship. So in that regard, this was better than I expected, especially when, the ship, I don't know how to say it, it just kind of aim locked like in the games. It was like a 360 no scope. I don't really know how else to describe it. That moment was incredible when they were using their guns, but
since people have been calling it the 360 no scope for as long as I can remember. I'm not a gamer, so that's not a term that I would use. Like, I tried not to co-opt that whenever I talked about it because I understand it. Like, I heard people calling it. I looked it up and then I was like, oh, that's cool, but I've never done one myself. So, you know what I mean? I don't feel comfortable describing it that way. But yeah, I think that generally speaking, that they have gotten better at all things as far as how they put the show together. I think craft wise, they've had a pretty consistent increase in quality. So I think on that level, it's great. In the context of the story, we'll get into that later. And I think if I had to, I think the ones at the end of last season were really good. There's been a ton of them. I mean, I think that the Thaw Station one, just because it was the first that really grabbed me in that way, is probably my favorite sequence like that. And that's what I would say if I had to make a definitive list. It looks like we have another one here, so let's look at this right away. This one is from Made in Brooklyn, 1975. My theory is Kara, will want to use the strange dog to revive her brother, and he could become a protomolecule hybrid person.
Yeah, we haven't mentioned this yet. So when Kara comes back home, she's all excited to tell her parents about what happened, but she learns that her brother Zan was killed in an accident. So that's just that's an incredible coincidence, right? Kara discovers something that can fix things, and her brother dies.
It does seem well timed, objectively speaking. I did like how they foreshadowed that it's dangerous there now that the soldiers are there, right? She almost got hit by the golf cart Jeep kind of thing that was going through there. So I think that this I think Made in Brooklyn 1975 is probably onto something. I wouldn't say that I don't know about any of the details involved, but I get where they're coming from and thinking that there might be some connection there.
Yeah, my guess is the hybrid bit. It could be a hybrid, but I don't think the prior molecule will be involved in this particular storyline. I don't have anything to base that off, but that's just the feeling I get right now.
Yeah, I mean, the hybrids from Project Caliban from, season 2, early part of season 3. That's a whole different process, of course.
Yeah. And I'm not saying the hybrid in that sense, not a proto-molecule hybrid. It may be a different kind of hybrid.
Right. Yeah, because I was just pointing out that, like, when someone gets infected with the proto-molecule, they turn into one of those zombies that spreads it to other people. The hybrids, the ones that we saw that were weaponized, that was a different process where it was introduced to them and it started to take over their physiology, but they weren't infected in the same way that regular people were.
All right. I think we can move on to Ceres. The
Yep.
United Fleet of the United Nations of Earth and Luna and the Martian Congressional Republic Navy have arrived at Ceres. They were expecting a fight, but no Free Navy ships were there. The station was abandoned by Marco and company. And MCRN Carino says it feels like a trap, and Avasarala acknowledges that they're already in it. So Carino returns. I don't know how to say her name either. We've got some weird names here, but she has returned. I think she was in season 3, and
Yep.
she's with Avasarala in this scene. I wanted to ask how you felt about the plan Marco came up with. I was expecting a full-blown war here, where the Free Navy would defend the station a little bit before running away. I never thought Marco would stay there forever, but I thought there would at least be a confrontation. But the plan Marco came up with was a lot better than I thought. How do you feel about this move?
Well, I think that I think he only had so many choices. I think it is probably the best choice for him to make. It's interesting. It's a great part of the story because you have like moral implications that we see with Filip, how he feels about it. You have tactical, of course, this does make them look bad, but he is giving up a lot. You know what I mean? He had Ceres is an important place in the belt. So I think what's best about this whole thing is that it manages to get you to think about all those different things. Like, did he make the right choice? I think yes, probably. Should he have done it? I mean, that's where it starts to get interesting, right?
I mean, from a strategic standpoint, I think he should have done it. I am completely behind Marco's decision here. From not from a humanitarian standpoint, but he's in a war and he knows he can't feed Ceres. They haven't got enough supplies, or they've got supplies, but he doesn't want to give it to them. So I thought, running away was the best option because he made Ceres the inner's problem. I think that was really shrewd.
Yeah, I think that there's definitely an argument to be made for it.
So they locate the people who are all together, and Nico Sanjani, the station chief, says they are the chief administrator and they'll talk to someone who matters. And Avasarala talks to Sanjani on a video call feed, so Avasarala doesn't go into the station, which is just smart. I was kind of surprised Avasarala was this close to the action anyway. I'm sure her ship wasn't, that close to Ceres, but what did you think about that? Were you expecting Avasarala to appear here?
I'm not really sure what to make of it. I mean, it seems to me that seems kind of crazy, right? I kind of understand where they might have had the idea that she has to be close because there's not faster than light communication. So, tactically for not necessarily Avasarala, but obviously high command have to be somewhere nearby if they have to make decisions. So I guess they could kind of explain it that way. I was surprised that Monica goes on to Ceres, goes on to the station later in the episode. So I was surprised when I saw that they were that close that she can just hop on a shuttle. I thought maybe that Avasarala might be somewhere tucked away from the station or whatever, you know what I mean? But it kind of makes it feel like they're right in the general vicinity. And I think it's probably a show thing that they had, they wanted to keep people close together for some reason, but I think you could probably explain it by the communication delay, that if they thought there was going to be a resistance right whenever they showed up, if they were going to have to be dealing with something in real time, then they would need to have Admiral Siddiqui, and I guess it's Admiral Carino now. It looks like she's been raised in her rank at the MCRN. they would have to be close by so that they could coordinate that. Avasarala is just Avasarala, so you want to be, you want her to be there because she drives the action, the story there.
And Avasarala is usually the star whenever she's in a scene. She steals the show, but in her conversation with Sandrani, I thought Sandrani was great, especially the bit about, when Avasarala asked why Sandrani was not working for the man who assassinated Dawes, Sandrani goes, "I work for the belt." I thought that was a great moment. And
yeah,
Sandrani overall was just great in this. I wasn't convinced. I wasn't really that interested in the earlier episodes in Sandrani, but here I really liked her.
I think that's part of the problem with with the faster pace is these characters, Rosenfeld, Sandrani, the guy who is with Avasarala in some of her scenes. I just figured out his name is Gareth from the X-Ray, from the casting thing. There's really not much time to develop them. So I thought that this was where you kind of get the idea of who this character is, why they're important for the story. And I thought it worked pretty well. I would like to have had more backstory, if I'm being honest, though. Obviously, it's a character that plays a role in the book. It's a little bit different on the TV show. But as you said, this was their moment. I work for the belt, and that is the whole that's the whole thing about this. That's the whole thing about all these characters. They're damned if they do, and they're damned if they don't. It's the same with Drummer and her people, and there's no good out. And for that, this Sandrani character, they made the choice to stay, even though they know that there's going to be this interrogation. They could be imprisoned. I think that this was a great episode for this character. I just want to take a second to look at the this here from 88th Bus Stop super chat. Thank you for the super chat. Someone alluded to Holden looking somewhat unhealthy and suggesting that cancer could have been the reason the show will be paused. I haven't heard anything about that. I did hear something, but I heard that he lost some weight and he tried to look like what the character was going through, but I can't confirm that. I only heard it secondhand. What did you think about that? Did you think it was noticeable that Holden looked physically different from the last season?
Yeah, it's definitely noticeable. And I've heard, I've read from the greatest source on the world, the internet, that he lost weight on purpose, like you said. No reason to doubt that at all. Anyway, I think Holden definitely looks different this season. He's always been a little bit lean, I think. But because they've been out in space for close to 200 days now, they might have wanted to make him look this way, to display the stress he's under. I think that's reasonable. Yeah,
that was my take when I watched it. I thought they all looked pretty haggard, and that was the way that they showed it with him. It didn't stand out to me as being dramatic. I thought they all looked really kind of beat down, especially in the first episode. And it just seemed like part of it to me. But I have heard a lot of people bring that up. So I definitely haven't heard anything about cancer. That's not something that I've heard at all. So thanks for that question. And we have one other one here from Made in Brooklyn, 1975. Marco didn't just run away and desert Ceres. He went the extra mile to sabotage Ceres and plant bombs that could kill Belters and Inners alike. We will get to the bombs that went off. We'll get to that later, but I don't think at this point we know what happened with that. It's not really clear if he left that behind, or if that's something that there's like organic resistance to them being there for the people who still, there's still a million people that live on Ceres. Some of them would naturally be resistant to any occupation. But I do think that's important. I think Made in Brooklyn brings up an important point, though, that he took everything of value before he left, and he did leave them with in a much worse situation than when he arrived. So we didn't really touch on that when we were talking about the decision that he made. What do you think about that part of his decision?
Yeah, I mean, that is to be expected from Marco. I think the people there only have they can only supply 1 million people on 3 weeks notice. So, you know, they've got food and air for only 3 more weeks. So they're gonna die off if the UN and the Martians don't help them. And it's cruel for sure, but this is what I expect from Marco. And he touches on this later on in the episode while he was talking to Filip about how people at the Ceres station aren't really belters. He doesn't see them as, real hardcore belters, I guess. And we'll talk more about that later on in the show.
Yeah, yeah. Hopefully, you can stick around, Made in Brooklyn, because we will be talking about that a little bit more later, because that's a big part of what happens between him and his son. So, thanks for the super chat. And one other thing I just have to bring up is the reminder that Dawes is dead. That's a bummer when you hear that again in this episode. I was reading the book again the other day, and I got to the chapters. There's a couple of Dawes chapters there, and that's one of the things I'm really missing from the season, is that part of the story. So it's definitely sad that they didn't. It's definitely not sad. It's frustrating that they couldn't incorporate this character a little bit in seasons 5 and 6, because this point that Avasarala makes is, it really underlines it when you think about Dawes was a bad guy, relative to Fred Johnson in the eyes of the inners, right? And so I liked how she made that distinction. You used to work for Dawes, who was reasonable. He was an okay guy. We could work with him. How are you working with Marco? And it's like, they don't really have a choice. What do you do if you don't work with Marco? You get thrown out an airlock, right? So it's
either that or your ship gets blown off, or your station.
Yeah, we saw that. Everybody who went against him had, we saw in season 5, whenever Drummer was out there scavenging, she found the ships of the person that voted against him, in whenever they had that trial on the Tynan in season 4. So, if anything, he's going after it. So Roz Gray says that he ain't dead. He's promoted to Harry Seldon. Yeah, he's what's his name? Jared Harris is still out there. He's still out there for us to enjoy. I just would have loved to see a little bit more of him in the Expanse, but I think it's totally understandable that he wasn't a series regular, and it's hard to keep them, and that kind of makes you worry about future adaptations, doesn't it? Like when you think people are like, oh, they'll just quit for 5 years and come back with another 3 books or whatever.
Yeah,
it's really hard when you don't have main actors on contract to actually put a whole cast together like that.
We have no idea what these actors are going to do in 5 years, and if they want to bring the series back, they could just be on a new popular show. Not even one of them, maybe 3 of them will be in a big show, so they can't come back to the Expanse. That's why the break kind of sucks.
Yeah. Let's get back into the Roci now.
All right. So after the Azure Dragon, after taking care of that problem, they're en route to Ceres, and we have an interesting moment between Holden and Clarissa. They've been a good duo this season, so I wanted to ask your opinion on this scene, and ask if Clarissa becomes a part of the crew in the books as well, or is this just a show thing? Because they're kind of getting really close here, Holden and Clarissa. Holden really seems to care about her now.
Yeah, Clarissa does become a permanent part of the crew in much the same way. The big difference in the books is that Holden is the one who really has a hard time with it. In the show, they made that in the first couple of episodes, they gave that to Naomi. And they sort of switched the thing where Naomi was kind of obsessed with the Barkeith going missing, and Holden was kind of obsessed that they had Clarissa, a murderer, on the ship. And they sort of flipped those things back and forth. And you kind of understand that after this episode, why they made that decision, because Holden introduces the idea of the ships going missing to Naomi because she's going through something, and he knows if she works on a project that it'll make her feel better. But Clarissa, I mean, there's the part here where he's trying to just make it right with the crew as they're there, not really personal to her, you know what I mean? And it comes up about her mods and that it's taking longer for her to recover from it. And then she goes into her whole thing about talking about how she got them because of him. And what's interesting is that, he says everyone on this ship has something they regret, including Amos, I think, and that she's in good company, and that's where that's left. But Clarissa's a great character because of the way that things played out, just the circumstances of her situation. Because what she did is in a different league compared to everyone else on the Roci. Yeah, they've killed people and stuff like that, but there's a good argument to be made that if people end up in prison for things, that what she did, that's like something that you get a life sentence for. You know what I mean?
And maybe even a death sentence if she was a Martian.
Absolutely. I mean, she blew up a ship. She killed people in cold blood. She could have caused way more. I mean, the one redeeming factor of all of it is that at the end, she actually saves everybody on the behemoth. But I think I think what's really not to drag it out, but what I think what's really interesting about her character and what's funny about it is that because Amos thinks she's okay, and because as fans we like Amos, it seems reasonable. Do you know what I mean? Like, it seems reasonable to have her there. And if he likes her, then how bad can she be? You know what I mean?
Yeah, but I'm thinking about it, how I would react if I was on that ship, and I'm not sure I would be okay with it, even if Amos liked her. I mean, I don't think I would be okay with it. Maybe if Alex was here, he would have an objection, but unfortunately, that's not going to happen.
Yeah, like I said, I think what if you really think about her story, the way that the circumstances played out, it's hard to fault Amos for, as the Earth is falling apart and she's trapped underground, they're trapped underground together. It's hard to fault him for bringing her along. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And what just the last thing I want to say, because I don't want to go too far into that, but the thing with Clarissa is she never forgives herself, and she never thinks that she should be a part of the crew or that anyone should be all right with it. If you said to her in your situation that you just described that you wouldn't be all right with it, she would agree with you. That's the internal thoughts of Clarissa Mal, is that she doesn't deserve to have another chance. She does deserve to be trapped underground for the rest of her life. And that's really underlined by the fact that Amos gave her the chance to take her life before she went in there. but she didn't think that she deserved the easy way out. And, that's an interpretation, obviously, but she had the chance to space herself and just end it all. And there's a part of her character that wants to try to atone, but knows that they never can.
And that's what makes these stories interesting, isn't it? I mean, if these were perfectly normal people, would we be watching? So from a dramatic standpoint, Clarissa is one of the best characters on the show.
Absolutely.
For the reasons you outlined.
We got another super chat here from 88th Bus Stop. Did Dawes betray Julie Mal because he never believed an Earther can truly become a Belter? That was a long time to ignore a mission distress call. I think Dawes is... this is a little bit difficult to answer because I've read that book more recently than I've watched that season of the show, and it doesn't play out exactly the same way. I think that the thing to remember with Dawes is he's resourceful and he is pragmatic in the sense that he would look at things in this with Julie and going after her and trying to save her at that time. It's my impression that it would be because she's an Earther. It's not like he's saying in black and white terms an Earther can never truly be an ally to the Belt. I mean, he brought Fred Johnson in and that sort of stuff. He does things that that Earthers are different, but that doesn't mean they can't be useful for the cause. I think that's a human thing, though, where if it's not going well and you have to look at, and you're assessing the situation, you have to make a decision. Maybe if it was a Belter in that same position, he would have acted different. But I don't think it's as black and white as that, as what you're saying there, 88th Bus Stop. But thank you for the question. Do you have anything to add? Do you have anything to add on that?
Not really, but from what I can remember, Dawes was using Julie Mao, and when she became, I suppose, a liability, that's why he stopped. That's why he didn't help her. I'm not sure about the details, but that's the impression I got.
Yeah, I think, like I said, there's a lot. There's a whole thing to go into that's kind of unrelated to where this episode. But
yeah,
if I think of something more to add to it, I definitely will.
Okay, I think we can continue with Bobbie and Amos. They had more than just that X-ray episode because they talked about food on the ship, which is just terrible in their opinion, and they reference the Canterbury here, also the Donnie, and there's a nice back and forth.
Yep.
This was just a nice scene. I'm not sure how consequential it'll be, but I wouldn't mind watching like a 20-minute sitcom or a rom-com between Bobbie and Amos on the ship. I mean, some of these scenes are just electric.
Yeah, I agree, and I think we already touched on what I really liked about this, and I think that it's just another place to point out that the food that they're eating right now is bad because of this war, So it's another one of those little details that are thrown in there that that just kind of add to the situation without saying something, add to the atmosphere, I guess, without explicitly saying, man, times are really tough ever since the Free Navy took over and threw those rocks at Earth. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I think, like I said, we touched on this after the X-ray, but their whole back and forth is littered with those references to earlier episodes, and like you said, they're just great playing off each other. So great scene all the way around.
Yeah, this food business also relates to what we'll talk about next, because Naomi is watching a news feed where one pundit says it's a win that they've regained control of Ceres, but the other one questions how much of their food is going to support the Belter, quote unquote, terrorists. And I think this was an interesting segment, because
absolutely.
Go on, Pete. Go on.
I was just going to say, I really liked, I brought this up in the recap, so I won't go into it that much, but it's just, I liked how they tied all of like the regular people's experience, the reaction of it, the reaction to the events, and how people are seeing it through those different filters that people have in their, in their way that they consume information. And it does add, it is another layer to what they have to deal with because of Marco's decision, right? Like they can't feed the people on Earth. Now they have all these people out here they have to deal with. So I liked how they kind of pointed that out through the news feed, what Naomi was watching.
Exactly. I mean, these little details and clips definitely make the world feel more realistic. And when Naomi's watching this new segment, Holden comes in to ask her about what happened when she froze up during the mission. Clarissa had to take over, and Naomi kind of feels humiliated because of this, because she feels like she let the team down, and she was having flashbacks to the Pella and Chezumuka. So Holden has the perfect solution for this. He changes the subject and asks for a favor by bringing up the Barkeith. He tells her about the data he got about the other missing ships from Bobbie. And Naomi knows what Holden's trying to do. And this was an interesting scene as well, because you come to a certain point in some relationships where your partner realizes your ulterior motive at all times, and this was one of those moments. I thought it was really cute.
Yeah, absolutely. I really loved the relationship stuff that they added. I mean, that's always been there, but I think in season 6, it was my feeling that this was peak Naomi and Holden. Like the whole idea, they've been together for years on this ship now. They've been through a lot. They understand each other. It's necessary to work together and to be in a relationship together. And that comes because you have their points of, you have their internal thoughts in the books. There's a lot of that's obvious there, but I thought they did a really good job of bringing that out. Like Holden, in the last episode in the Azor Dragon, he said, okay, whenever she said that she wasn't ready to talk about it. So he waits for a while. He shows up here, and then he has a plan on, he wants something, he needs something, but like in any relationship, he does it, he approaches this in a way that it's beneficial for her. And not only that, but she gets it, they know each other well enough that she's like, oh, I see what you're doing. Okay. I'm glad you're here. Thank you for being you. You know what I mean? So it's cool. We have another quick super chat here from TM Martin again. What do you make of that comment Walker made to Drummer about intimidating Marco sexually? Do you have anything that you can? I think prepared to say about that.
I think we talked about this last week as well, and Walker cracks me up. He reminds me of Ashford in that regard. I think we mentioned that, and there's definitely some room for fan fiction here. I'm not going to say much more than that.
Yeah, I think that it was supposed to be mysterious. Like it's something. It's one of those lines that it's funny just because someone went inside their mind and put these words together and thought that was something that needed to be presented in the first few minutes of talking to people. Like he's never met Michio, who's going into his care, never met Joseph. has a they know each other, him and Drummer, but it doesn't seem like they're that close or whatever. You know what I mean? So I think it's supposed to be like that. Like it has pure comedic value, but then at the same time, you wonder why would he do that? You know, if you look at the two people, Marco is, I think, pretty much if you had to choose, you would pick Marco as far as, physical beauty.
Yeah,
Physical.
but I guess that's why Walker is so funny. He needs to be.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's just like a great thing. I imagine, when you're writing this in a group with a bunch of people in a writer's room, then it's one of those things that come up and you can't let it go. Once it's out in the world, you have to share it,
Yeah.
Thanks again for that. So where were we at? We're talking Naomi and
Holden, and I think we can move on to the Pella if you'd like.
Well, I did want to ask you as a non-book reader, what do you think is going? He's really pushing this idea of the Barkeith going missing. We did learn that he does have that data from the other missing ships from Bobbie. He got that from Mars. And what does this look like to someone who's never read the books? Like, what do you expect is going to come out of this? And the other thing I wanted to ask about it is that he mentions that he might know somebody who would know more about this whenever they're talking. So who do you think that character might be?
I think that character is LV Okoye from season 4, because she dealt with the proto-molecule destroyers more than Holden did. I think she went into that artifact, didn't she? So I think that's definitely LV Okoye, Dr. LV Okoye. I'm pretty sure that's going to turn out to be her.
Solid reasoning there, I would say.
I'm trying to remember the other part of your question. Sorry.
The Barkeith, the ship's going missing. Why do you think this is important?
I mean, obviously, they're trying to keep this proto-molecule and proto-molecule destroyer civilization storyline relevant, but because I know this season is only 6 episodes, and we're not going to get more than that, at least for the foreseeable future. I don't think we're going to get a satisfying payoff in this storyline. If anything, we're just going to get some tidbits. So I really can't get that excited about what I'm seeing on this front, to be perfectly honest.
Fair enough.
If I knew the show was going to continue, I would still be really excited for it, because, like I said countless times, this stuff is the main reason why I like The Expanse. Is one of the main reasons, let's say. And by right now, it just feels like a side story that's going to give us some tidbits, and that's all.
Yeah, like I said, that's sound reasoning. We can probably go on over to the Pella now.
Right, at the Pella, Filip is watching news feeds where he sees that the decision to flee Ceres station is not being received well by the belt. And once again, these news segments are playing an important role in that we are, seeing these characters react to what's going on the other side of the Sol system, and I think that's a great addition this season. And what do you think about this? What do you think about Filip feeling down because they're not being perceived as heroes? On the contrary, they're being, their reputation is in tatters. What do you think about that?
I think it's the perfect thing. It's a perfect external thing to really just bring out what's going on inside of his head anyways, in different ways, like with his mother, with his father. he has these feelings and then he has the reality. And so with this idea of people not starting to lose their admiration for the Free Navy as things start to get bad, as they are going to always do whenever there's a war going on. I think it's a nice parallel to what's, like I said, the outside and the inside, what his father says and what his father does, how he feels about his father, how he thinks he should perform, how he should be, who the person he feels like he is, the person he feels like he needs to be as a part of, this military operation or whatever. So yeah, I again, we mentioned it before. We don't need to go on about it so much, but the news feeds as the way in is great here, and I really like a lot happens with Filip in this episode. A lot happens overall, but for his story in general, like, it has a couple twists and turns. You know what I mean? So I feel like this is a great little spot to establish where he's at, because things are going to change pretty quickly.
Yeah, and Filip has a one-on-one conversation with his father, and Marco here says, people over on Ceres are soft and they're dependent on their comforts. That was definitely an interesting comment. And Marco goes, quote, "You and I, we're meant to be out here in the darkness, in the fight. That's who we are, who we were born to be." And he urges Filip to never forget what his name is, the name they share, and they share a hug. And this seems to convince Filip and to calm him down. So I wanted to ask you about Marco's comments here about Ceres, and why he is making these comments is interesting to me. I think you can shed more light on this.
Yeah, I mean, it's anything, right? Any population is going to have natural factions and differences of opinions about certain things. I think with him bringing it up here, he's trying to do a little bit of damage control, because, as you mentioned, as we've discussed, there is a good reason to do what he did, but morally, and then just on the fact that their stated purpose is to help belters, it kind of flies in the face of that whenever you're doing the opposite, right? And I think that, when he says, I think that this idea, don't never forget what your name is, the name that we share, it's, he's trying to give him this, he's trying to pull on that thing that is just, we're apart, and we're the only ones that can do this. I mean, that's my take on it. What did you think?
I think that's something that abusive parents always, bring up. We're family, we share blood. That's why, we gotta stick together. That's just textbook abusive parenting, I think. When when your child disagrees with you, just bring that up, and you win them over. It's that easy, I guess.
Yeah, and I think that we're going to touch on this a little bit more. I don't want to get into it because of what he has to do later, but I definitely had something I wanted to add there on that same line. So I like that line of thought. Just let's put that in the back of our minds, and we'll get to that in a minute.
All right, we are moving on to the Tynan and the Inazami. The drummer and Walker are discussing the Golden Bough dissidents they're teaming up with. So, they've got some support now, at least. And here, Michio is watching another news feed. We've got another one of those. And we won't go too much into this because it's Monica's propaganda, basically. And we see Pastor Anna, I think. What did you think about her return? Was it satisfying?
Well, I mean,
it was not, but
it was not. But it was awesome just the same. It's one of those things. When I saw it the first time, I thought, okay, well, that's better than nothing. And then I read something that they were saying that, I think it was Ty, he said that they were hoping to involve, like, whenever they found out it was only going to be 6 episodes, like they didn't have a choice, that's what they were getting, that they had to start thinking about things that they had to cut. And I think that there was an implication that they had to cut some of what they would have done with Anna and Prax and bringing them back. And so, yeah, it felt like a bummer, but it was still I still had an emotional reaction whenever I saw her on the screen, and I was glad that they were able to do at least that, because if not, then you would always say, oh, whatever happened. Anna actually, in the book Babylon's Ashes, she is involved in the epilogue, the prologue and the epilogue. She doesn't play an active role during the main part, but they do tie up the character to that extent. And it's possible that there might still be more, I think. I don't have anything to say that for sure, but we'll see what more they do with these the propaganda, as you referred to it, the things that Monica's doing to try to win over the Belters. But yeah, I will say this again when we talk about Prax, but it was a difficult time. If one of these actors was going to come into Toronto, they would have to, I think at that time, as far as I understand it, they would have had to do a 14-day mandatory.
My goodness.
They would have had to spend 14 days in quarantine before they could even get be on the set. So if it's a 1-day actor, you're not going to be able to have them involved in the thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. And I think we can move on to the main subject here, which is Drummer getting more information about the supply depots from Walker. There may be up to 10 of them that Marco is hiding. I still don't really know why Marco is keeping these. I mean, from a strategic standpoint, I get it. He can retreat to these points at any time and have his supplies, but there must be another reason for it, I think. Maybe, he was planning this all along. He was planning to leave Ceres and he wanted these supplies out there. But I'm looking for an ulterior motive and I can't find it yet.
I think as far as what they've said in dialogue on screen, they're making it out that there's something going on Medina Station, and that takes priority over everything else. Like when I had that scene where he was looking at the different supply depots where they were located and looking at getting supplies. As far as I can tell, that is exactly what they've said in the show about what he's doing that for. Other than that, it's just speculation.
I see. Michio and Joseph get into a heated discussion here about what's happening on Earth after they watch the news story. And Joseph doesn't seem that sympathetic. And he says, welcome to the belt, to the Earthers, because they now know what the Belters are going through every single day. I thought that was a nice detail. Anything else to add on this whole sequence?
Well, it's, that goes back to what Avasarala was saying in the X-Ray episode last week. She said, we're all Belters, and it's why it's hard. That's why she went with that plan to try to get Monica to try to win some people over. Because it's a hard sell. You're saying you want us to feel bad for you because you're in the same situation that we've always been in. You know what I mean? Yeah, someone threw a rock at you, but I didn't do it. You know what I mean? Like I didn't sit here and strap it to the back of a ship and throw it at your thing, at your planet. That's something that happened. And yeah, it sucks when you don't know where your water and food's coming from, but how are you supposed to get that much sympathy from someone who that's just reality for? So I thought that was a really good thing to throw in there. In an episode where there's not a lot to do with Drummer, and Walker. I mean, it's funny because he after they have the falling out, he says, "I can see why you don't want that one on your ship." And that's what I put in my notes. It's like, man, he's making his lines count, isn't he? He has at least one that he barely says any words in this, but it's just a line that you can't help forget. I mean, you can't forget because it's like perfect for the situation. So definitely digging that character. They didn't have a lot to do in this episode, but it was nice that they were able to touch on how Belters experience what's happening. These two are in a marriage together. They're right in this ship together all the time, and they have like a really different reaction to it.
Okay. Do you think we can move on?
Yes, let's do it.
Let's touch on Monica now. She talks to Avasarala about her, I'll call it propaganda piece, but news segment, we could also call it. Anyway, Monica is filming another one, this time at Ceres, and this time on Ceres. And Avasarala tells the military to keep an eye on her because she has a knack for causing trouble. And we see one of these soldiers on Ceres who says, "Didn't we come here to, shoot these people?" He's bloodthirsty. He wants war. And I think this guy on the left, he's the one who says that. I think he might be an MCRN soldier. At first I thought
I got it wrong in my recap. I was thinking of them all as United, the United Fleet, but it's definitely the guy on the right is an Earther and the guy on the left is a Martian. You can tell by their suits, by their armor.
Yeah, but the main thing here is that we have the explosions, and turns out Marco didn't just abandon the station. He also either planted some bombs or there were some people that were still working for Marco there, or were maybe sympathetic to his cause, that wanted to hurt the station at all costs because it is now in the hands of the inners. This was, I think, a shocking moment for me because when the soldiers went in and cleared the area, I thought, this must be clear. That's all Marco's got in his hands. But this explosion surprised me. What do you think?
Yeah, I was. It's definitely interesting, and I think it shows how difficult it is to hold any of these stations in anywhere outside of anywhere in the belt. Really, is the current conditions. There's always going to be some people there who are more sympathetic towards the Free Navy than they are towards the inner planets. And so it's a tricky situation. And I didn't know if it was supposed to be implied if this is something that was, organic that happened after the fact, or if this was always part of Marco's plan. I thought it was kind of cool that you saw that, some of the ships were probably damaged. They were like corvettes that looked like the Roci. And then you also saw this water that was, such a valuable resource, and there's so much of it just going, just being wasted here.
I actually didn't notice that. I thought it was just maybe air, but this makes things even more worrying because they only had 3 weeks of air and water, and if they lose some of it to this explosion, woof.
No, it's definitely it sped up the ticking time bomb for sure. Definitely made a big difference in what they have to deal with. And I think that's really all we need to say about that at this point, because like I said, you don't know how that, we had to figure out how it was orchestrated, I guess, and what the response will be. And we have the main event to get to.
Ooh, yeah. Let's talk about
I don't want to take too long to get there.
Yeah, let's talk about the Pella now, because they discover the Rocinante on its way to Ceres. Luckily, the Roci was not on Ceres when the bombs went off. Marco feels confident because they have them outgunned. It's 3-1. And they have a missile advantage of 5-1. So he feels like this is as good a time as any to take them out. But Rosenfeld doesn't feel that confident because it is not necessary. The Roci, in the grand scheme of things, is not a massive threat to the Pella and the Free Navy's overall plans. So Rosenfeld tries to be the voice of reason, but that doesn't work. That doesn't work on Marco, and he orders everyone to their battle station, and then he asks Filip to take the guns. Filip accepts, knowing full well that they're planning to kill his mother's ship with her in it. And I think this was just a great move by Marco, from a viewer's perspective. It was obviously horrible for a father to do, but it tells us a lot about Marco. And I think it tells us a lot about Filip as well, because he was willing to accept this role after being hesitant throughout this season about what his father was doing. Filip was ready to cross the line as well. What do you think about this whole decision to go after the Roci?
Yeah, I think it's a tough day at work when you have to go in and you find out that your job for that day is to kill your mom, for sure. And I think this part of that's cruelty. I think part of that is just that he's a cruel person, and if somebody's got to do it, then it's him. That's fine. I think it's a bit of a test, like you were saying, that he did have to accept this. He didn't. It was an order, but of course he could, resist it. So I think it's part of his cruel nature. It's part of it is a test to see him, will he do it? But there's also that something. There's like that. There's something about it that feels like a point of no return for his son's character. You know what I mean? It's like, if you cross this line for Marco's cause, what can you really do after that? You can't really walk away at that point. I mean, he's already been involved in the rocks. Once you kill your mother, like
Christina in the comments makes a great point about this. She says, if Filip kills his mom, Marco owns Filip as well. I think that's
what I'm saying. It's like, once he does that, he's his for life. Like, he can make him do anything at that point. There's just nothing that, like, what could he tell him to do that's worse? Kill himself? You know what I mean? It's like, it's just, I think that you really, like, when I first watched this, I was like, yeah, that's really cruel. How could he ask his son to do it? But it's one of those things that, if you think about it even a little, it's just wild. Like, that situation. I mean, and all he did is grow up this guy's son. You know what I mean? Like, that's his life. That's where he's at.
Yeah, I mean, we've definitely got that problem in the real world as well. Your family can determine a lot of things about how you'll grow up and how you'll end up.
Yeah, absolutely.
This is a great reminder of that. We've got another super chat, I think. You want me to?
Yeah, we have. You can if you want. Yeah.
TM Martin, thank you for another $5. He says, do you think Bull disappeared because he would have thrown off the Roci crew dynamics with too many Earthers on board?
Yeah, I don't know if that's the most important thing. I think that fans were trying to figure out how they were going to deal with Alex, and Bull made the most sense. I think that idea of him holding Alex's cup at the end, that seemed like it was foreshadowing that they would bring him on board. But I think the way that it played out, they always wanted to bring Bull back they didn't know that Alex was going to be gone whenever they wrote the 5th season. So they always wanted to bring him back, and they had a role for him to play. And then I suppose they have a choice whenever they got to it. And I think that if you're willing to say that Holden can pilot the ship, then I think it's the right choice not to bring somebody else in there and complicate that dynamic anymore. You know, we've seen that they have a lot going on inside the Roci since the first episode. They're not really even through that yet. So how would Bull being there like an outsider that wasn't involved in any of the stuff that came before it, how would that make that situation better? And I think that's where, for me, it makes sense not to bring him back into it for that reason.
Yeah, having to get Alex out of there was already a tough challenge, and writing in another character to be part of the crew, I think that's just a step too far for the writers. It's just too difficult. I think that's why they chose not to make Bull a part of the crew. And I think they were right in that decision.
Yeah, I think that, you know, it made sense just as there has to be a pilot, it made sense to use him if that was the case. But I think that it's okay that they did it the way that they did it. And yeah, I don't think he would. I liked the character by the end of last season. I didn't have anything against him. It would have been fine if he was there, I guess. But I think that it's better without him because we can just focus on the people that we're really invested in at this point.
Exactly. We have another super chat by Juan Do. Thank you for the €2. Do you want to get this one, Pete?
Marco intimidates Filip sexually. Yeah.
All right then.
What else can you say? That's just.
Oh,
it says it all, doesn't it?
I think so too. I think we can move on to Amos and Bobbie now, before we continue with this Pella versus Roci confrontation. Amos and Bobbie are continuing to bond, working on her armor, when Amos gets a message from Prax. Yes, Prax is back. And I watched your breakdown when you said, you know, he might have shot the scene from his closet in his home.
Yeah,
that was pretty funny. And
I mean, I think he might have done that. What do you think? Do you think I'm onto something there?
Probably. I mean, why would he need to be somewhere else? To be honest, that's true.
Yeah.
And you know, he doesn't have
great. Just to throw it out there, though, some great face acting from his closet, if that's the case.
I mean, yeah, that guy.
He really made the most out of what they gave him to do here. I mean, really, I'm not saying that to be like facetious. I think that the way that he handled the call was fantastic.
Indeed. I'm trying to remember if I've seen the actor in something else, but let's not digress too much. The guy's a great actor. I agree. This message is about a new strain of yeast that could create massive amounts of food out of little more than spare carbon dioxide and waste energy. But this is obviously a massive game changer. When the entire solar system is struggling with food, this Prax fella has come up with, and his team has come up with an incredible food source that could be crucial in getting out of this crisis. And Prax wants Amos to use his contacts to, I guess, share this data. And that's about it. What do you think about this sequence, Pete?
Yeah, I guess there's a couple of things. This is something that he doesn't really go into it completely here, but this is one of those things that they've figured out after the introduction of the protomolecule. Like they learn some things, like sometimes they have different kinds of, like for the ship, say, like they have different composites that they can put together after they study how the protomolecule does things. And this is another situation where they can take something that was, useless and actually get a lot of food out of it. So it is a huge thing for a planet that's dying. That's pretty obvious. And I think that the big takeaway from this whole scene is just that he's doing this, he's risking his family, he's risking his own safety. I mean, his coworker was killed because she was trying to give this to the inner planets, and his reaction to that was to go and take it and give it to the inner planets. So Amos has that realization where he says, there's nothing in this for him. He's just doing it because he's a good guy. And I think that's a great ending for a character to have in this story, considering that they weren't able to bring him back, but I thought this worked really well.
Yeah, it was also a great moment for Amos because he realizes there's, we've seen him this season before asking how much they were getting paid and how that wasn't enough to chase, Marco. He was wondering why he was out here in the first place. But in this instance, he's doing this just to help out a friend. And I think that's an important moment for Amos's development.
Absolutely. And that's a great take on that, because it seemed like, I mean, when Amos was saying those things, when he was saying, are you getting paid more and all of that, it didn't necessarily seem out of character, but it's not something that he was always concerned with. It wasn't a big part of his character before. And then when you see this revelation that you just pointed out, it really makes that make sense, doesn't it?
Exactly.
And there was definitely that callback to their relationship and how much fun that was to watch when he says, "Don't worry about me or May or the rest of us. I can take care of them." And then he just sort of ends with, "I miss you, my friend," and it's like, back then you were like, wow, Amos can actually have a friend. You don't even know if he's like capable of those kinds of relationships or whatever, and see that come full circle. It's a great thing.
And also in the meantime, Holden can't get any sleep. I liked it when Naomi, I think it was Naomi that called Holden to the desk, and Holden was like, I'm awake. And it just showcases the stress Holden is under. He can't even get an hour of sleep in. And
yeah,
Naomi explains to him that this she was reviewing the Barkeith footage and the other footage from other ships. It's like a hole opens up in the floor, and if someone falls in, then they're gone. But then a minute later, the hole itself is gone and everything seems normal until another hole opens up somewhere else. And then for the next minute, more people fall into that. So this is what she figures out. I don't think that's too much, really. That's why I said earlier in the stream that I wasn't too excited about this, because we're not getting much progress. But at least she's able to connect these disappearances.
Yeah, I think there's not really much I can say about any of that.
Exactly.
Like I said, for the most part, it works as it's something for her to do at this point, and you can understand why Holden would be obsessed with that, and kind of surprised that nobody else is. I think that's sort of one of the things that comes out in this, is that all of that stuff just happened. Yeah, there's a war going on, but there may be something bigger out there that could change things significantly on top of all of that. You know what I mean? And Holden has that unique position where he's still haunted by what he's seen. So, he's keeping it in the story or whatever,
All right, ladies and gentlemen, let's get to the main event here. The 3 Free Navy ships are closing in on the Roci, and the Pella has a missile lock, and Marco tells Filip to take the shot. To basically tell Filip to kill his mother. Yep. They fire a group of missiles that the Roci is able to shoot down with its PDCs, and this whole sequence, I think, was done really well. It excited me a lot. I had to rewatch it to, pick up more details. But moving on. Holden decides to fire up the railgun even though they're too far away. He does a quick turn, which we classified as a 360 no-scope, and he fires a shot that hits the lobber who didn't have time to react. So one of those ships that were with Marco has taken damage. It is crippled. It is venting atmosphere, and so the other ship has to break off to help them. And Marco's ship, the Pella, is alone. But Marco, I guess, he says he doesn't need either of them. He's just too confident. And I thought that was a puzzling moment, I think.
Well, to be fair, technically, the Pella does outmatch the Roci in every metric that you might be able to put them against each other in. Like he's not wrong. He's not wrong, but the Roci here, they apply a technique that nobody could really plan for. The one thing that they have is they have this aftermarket keel-mounted railgun that Alex liked to bring up so much in the past, and in the books you hear him say it about 10,000 times. They have this one thing, and I'll let you get into the rest of the battle, but I don't think Marco is making a mistake whenever he thinks that the Pella should be able to beat the Roci one-on-one. It's a newer, bigger, faster ship that has more weapons, you know what I mean? So it's like he's not wrong.
Yeah, I mean, I get that part, but he went into this 3-1 and it's now 1-on-1. No matter how strong the Pella is, that still has diminished their chances. And
right,
this is not a crucial mission either. So
no, and that's really that's really the chain reaction that happens here. You brought it up that Rosenfeld, wasn't on board for it, and she was right. There really is there's nothing about destroying the Roci that makes sense. Now that he's in the fight, though, it's pretty hard to imagine that he would run away because one of his other, I guess you could say, well, he would be able to say it wasn't his fault, it was their fault or whatever. But yeah, this is all happening, right? This all happens in a couple of minutes total. So it's not like there's a lot of deep thinking going on here. It's a lot of chase and heat of the moment type stuff, right?
Yeah, that's true. The Roci takes damage after a little bit of an exchange, and Amos and Clarissa are trying to repair these. There's a great moment here where Amos tells Peaches that that's the job. Even when they're taking fire, they have to fix stuff. And while everything seems lost for the Roci when they're in a tough spot, Bobbie comes up to assess the situation, and when Holden fires again, she notices that the Pella dodges the same exact way each time. So she notices a pattern. And I definitely did not pick this up the first time I watched it. And this is how, the Roci is able to outmaneuver the Pella. He tells Holden to fire torpedoes to give them something different to worry about and to give her PDC control. And when Jim fires the torpedoes, she fires a burst of PDC rounds to where they will dodge. So because she knows the pattern, she knows where the Pella will be. And they fire the railgun again in that exact spot, even though the spot at first is empty. You see them moving through space looking almost like a misfire, since they aimed at nothing, like we said. And when the Pella dodges again, they fly right into the rounds, and the Pella is knocked out temporarily. This is where I wanted to ask you about how this was portrayed in the books, because it was, like I said, it was difficult to pick up in real time when I was watching it. I couldn't really figure out what Bobbie saw. I had to pause and then go back. So how was this scene different, or was it the same in the books?
Well, it was completely like the actual the way they killed the Pella or the way they disabled the Pella, I guess, because it's able to go away. And the whole railgun, using the railgun, that's all the same, but everything else about it is completely different in the books. Like it really it's long, it's drawn out. There's like way more people on the Roci because Fred Johnson, they're transporting Fred Johnson to Ceres, from Tycho to Ceres, and he has a whole crew with him. So it's like Holden isn't doing anything in the book. Like he's sitting around thinking, I wish I had something to do, because he's not involved in the battle at all. He's basically just trying not to stroke out because they're doing this flip and burn that is crazy. That I guess you kind of see that in the show, but it's not like, it didn't really feel like they were dying or they might die as a result of the maneuver. It seemed more like, hey, this is this cool thing we can do. We'll just whip the ship around and fire and then go back to it. You know what I mean? It's not to say that it's bad in the show. It's actually, like we had a conversation earlier, it is one of the best battle scenes. It's just the adaptation. It's a lot different. And the one part that was missing for me was just that the way that she figured it, the way that Bobbie figured it out, it seemed a lot more impressive in the book. It seemed like it was a puzzle. She was trying to solve a puzzle. Here, it's sort of like, it just felt like something that anyone in her position might do. In the books, it seemed like this was some kind of amazing discovery that maybe nobody would have ever thought of, and that is just like so brilliant. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
But the thing is that the Pella, all of these ships, they use a ton of AI to do everything. So the idea here is that they're using the ships dodging. They know it turns, so they know there's going to be a railgun round coming their way. So they have the computer is helping them fly the ship, and because of that, it's doing the same thing in a pattern that they can actually anticipate. And so, yeah, like you said, she sends these shots out that look like they're going nowhere, that there's really no reason that they would notice. They're just floating in a straight line in space to a point where they are going to try to make the Pella be later. And those two things come together perfectly, and then it gets killed for the time being.
Yeah, and that is when Bobbie is ready to take the kill shot and end the Free Navy's reign by killing Marco. But Holden wants to try to take Marco prisoner. Naomi points out that Marco will never surrender, but Holden says if it doesn't work, Bobbie can take the shot, so it doesn't hurt to try. When he pulls up the comm and asks Marco to give up, which of course he won't do, Marco moves aside so that they can see Filip. He does this intentionally. There's like almost a slide by Marco. And I also like the way Marco greeted James. He only said Jim Holden's name. He said James Holden. But that delivery by Marco was exquisite.
Yeah, and the look and the actual look on his face that he holds there as he's sitting there, it look. I mean, I felt like I was there. I felt like this was a real thing that was happening. You know what I mean? Like he was. These are two men. The one on the other end, they're gonna die really soon, as far as they know. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
And he's putting on a face because he knows that people are watching him in his last moments. And this is the face that he's going to present in that situation. No begging, no asking for mercy, nothing. Just look at my face. Look at who I am. I'm right here. Oh yeah, my son, he's right here too. He's right behind me. Let me step over to the side here so that you can see him. Oh, it was great. It's such a great thing. It happens in the books. It's slightly different. Like I said, Holden he's not doing anything in the battle. He's not flying the ship. He's not commanding. He's just sitting there, getting crushed by the high G. And so Bobbie sends him a message to distract them. And that's what he comes up with, is that he calls them on a tight beam or whatever. But in the thing in there, he sort of, Marco just sort of changes it so that they can only see Filip in the last moments. And it feels like he's actually doing that to try to maybe get them to think twice about killing the ship, and killing him. In the show, I thought they made him seem a lot more cavalier, and I just thought it was a great look, for that scene right there.
Yeah, Marco does that by saying that he will die before he lives at the end of their leash, and that's when Bobbie takes the shot. She realizes Marco's not gonna surrender. When everyone, including Naomi, watches them on as the torpedo approaches to kill them. So it seems like this is a done deal, but the warhead does not detonate, and the Pella's drive comes back online. The Pella disengages on Marco's command, and they leave. Amos comes in and asks if they won, and Bobbie says no, but at least they didn't lose. And at the last moments, so in the last moments of the episode, we see Holden doing something while the missile was approaching. And on his heads-up display, we learn that he disarmed the torpedo and let them live. So this is pretty much on brand for Holden, because he's not a killer. And he knew that letting Filip die and killing Filip on purpose would break Naomi. And I guess that's why he didn't kill them. I don't agree with it on a strategic standpoint, but from a strategic sense, but from an emotional standpoint, it makes sense for Holden. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it's just one of those things, you could try to make sense of it. You can try to figure it out. You can try to follow what we know about the character, everything that led up to this moment. But I think the reality is this is a situation where he saw Naomi's kid. The kid looks like Naomi. You know what I mean? He saw her face in this child's face, and he had only a few seconds, and he made an irrational decision. And that's the kind of thing people do. That's the kind of thing that everyone does on a daily basis. And the difference here is there are some real stakes. It's not just the people that are on this ship that would have won the battle. It's like lots of other people that are unrelated might die as a result of this decision. And also in the internal dynamics, he's thinking for Naomi. You know what I mean? Like, that is just not necessarily his job, especially not in this position right here. She didn't make a plea to stop it. He did it for her in a way that isn't necessarily sensible, or even, it's hard to back it up after the fact. But like I said, I think you have to look at this as just what it is. It's a person having an emotional response to something and then making a decision, and in this case, quite an irrational one. And it'll be interesting to see how it goes from there, right?
Yeah, and it could also be that Holden didn't want to make a martyr out of Marco. I think that could be the case as well. But, how else are you going to end the war? He has to be killed at some point because he's not going to surrender. Maybe that's...
Yeah, I think... I did see, sorry to interrupt, but I did see a lot of people add that in there, like that whenever they're trying to kind of get past the dissonance that's involved there, you know what I mean? But I don't think that's the case. I mean, I think that he just saw this person that's he thinks is a part of a person that he loves, and he had an emotional response. And yeah, after the fact, you could say, well, I didn't want to make him a martyr, but like you just said, you as you were saying that, you provided the answer to why that's a terrible idea. He's going to die anyways. Exactly. Killing him today or tomorrow or any other day, he's still going to be a martyr for some people. In this case, he's dead and nobody else dies. And I mean, that's just the reality of it, right?
And I also wonder how Jim's gonna feel if the Free Navy and Marco's upcoming plans, which we'll talk about in a minute, hurts, I don't know, thousands of people, hundreds of thousands of people, millions of people. I'm not sure. If that happens, what kind of a toll is that going to take on Jim's conscience? Maybe he'll feel like he could have prevented that. So this
Absolutely.
is definitely a very consequential decision by Jim.
Absolutely. There's real stakes. Like I said, it's a thing that people do. I'll probably do this today at some point. I'll probably have to make a decision. My emotions will factor into it, but there'll be zero stakes involved. You know what I mean? Like it'll be like nobody's going to die because of any decision I make, So I think that's really, I find it horribly frustrating that he decided to do this. You know what I mean? Don't get me wrong. I don't want to say that, but I think that is what makes it make sense in like why it's a great thing to add to the story is that,
and
Holden's on a big, we know how Holden was in the beginning. In book 6, this, as far as just like big picture stuff for me, book 6 was where, in book 5, you had him separated from the rest of the crew, and he had to kind of look at himself and where he was at. And he really had a new appreciation for how important this family that he's brought together is for him and how much he needs that, I don't know if the show conveyed that as well as the book does, probably not, but it's there, you know what I mean? So like that was his whole revelation at the end of the 5th book, was that, man, these people are my family and I need them, and I'm much better when they're here. And so, you see him changing here, and the thing about book 6 is like it redefines him as a character. This is part of that, and it continues from here. But I think that in the books, he did the same thing in the books. This isn't a show only thing. It played out a lot differently though, because Fred dies during this battle. You know what I mean? So nobody's thinking about whether he turned off the like he deactivated the torpedoes or not. They're thinking, oh my God, Fred is dying. You know what I mean? So they're dealing with that. They're just happy to get out of this situation alive. And then it comes up later, you know what I mean? And here it's really front and center. Like even if you hadn't thought about it before, now that you see it at the end of this episode, there's no way that this doesn't get brought up again, right? And
exactly.
They released a little teaser today where they kind of showed a little bit of that. I won't get into it here, but I guess I'll talk about that in my next video. It's an interesting situation. And before we move on from that, I just wanted to thank Dana Pearson for the super chat. And he says he loves the format. I actually like doing this format. I appreciate that you guys are here and you're watching. Hopefully by the time we get to the end of the season, we'll have it down and it'll be, something that we can do in the future with different shows.
Agreed. And I think we can move on to the end of the episode, where Marco is furious that they lost, and he tells Filip he failed in front of everyone. So he shifts the blame to Filip. This was just incredibly hard to watch from Marco's perspective. But it was satisfying to watch because Filip turns it around and says it's Marco's fault because they didn't need to go after the Rocinante in the first place. And he's 100% right. He blames Marco's pride and challenges his authority in front of the whole crew. And that's when Marco calls Filip a coward. He cuts him off and relieves him of duty. Marco tells Filip to get off of the deck and out of his sight. And like I said, Filip was entirely correct because Rosenfeld warned Marco that they shouldn't go after the Roci. What do you think? Because I didn't expect Filip to go face to face with his father in front of everybody after, getting on his side. But when Marco tried to blame Filip for it, I think that was the natural reaction. I mean, Marco had it coming. I mean, that's what I think.
Yeah, absolutely. There was no reason to do it. He sees here that it's an unforced error. It makes him look terrible in front of everybody. And he looks for a way to shift the blame onto his son. And really, it's not even, I don't know if he was explicitly doing that or if it just comes out that way because Filip's ready to explode or whatever. Filip was on the guns. He didn't really do anything wrong. So I don't even think that's I don't think he's saying that in the direct sense. I think it's more of just like, if he had a better crew, this would have went better. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it really comes down to what Isaiah Morris says in that quote there. It's, if things don't go right, it must be somebody else's fault because it's not his, when, obviously it's plain. And like I said, Filip goes through a big journey in this episode because this is a thing that, even though he was pulled closer to his father earlier in the episode, it's, how can he reconcile these two things here? You know what I mean? Like, his father says we need to be together, and then just a couple of hours later, he tells him he's a coward and get out of my sight. You know what I mean? So it's a messed up situation. He has nowhere to go with this at all, right?
Yeah, and I don't think he's gonna get on Marco's good side now, because this is not the first outburst. This is not the first outburst Filip has had, and Marco, I think, decided to let it go, let what happened on Ceres go when Filip killed his friend. But challenging him like that in front of the whole crew just isn't something they can, they can't move past that. I think this is a turning point, like you said.
Yeah, and I'm looking at the chat, and people are saying that they thought that was implied that he didn't do a thorough job. I didn't take that away from it. I don't know. Is that what you thought, Benja?
I'm not really sure. I mean, like you said, the only thing Filip did was to fire the weapons, and as far as I know, is he aiming himself? Or is he just pressing a button and the AI is taking care of the locking procedure?
Yeah, I don't want to get into the details of all of that. I don't know for sure, but I think Marco is the captain. He wasn't opposed to it until he lost. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He wasn't making any corrections or doing anything at all. It seemed like, as far as what we were watching, that he was doing the job that was presented for him. And really what it comes down to is whoever was piloting is using that AI to dodge, and they figured it out that it was a pattern.
Oh, right.
I mean, the Roci was being slowly beaten down, wasn't it? I mean, they were losing control of the PDCs, and it was a dire situation if they didn't figure out what they did. They were losing.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why, Filip was right to point that out. He didn't do anything wrong. So, I don't get that. I don't understand that suggestion from the chat. I don't understand that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a military strategist or someone who ever, I can't say what the different people on a spaceship do at their posts, you know what I mean, except for what I've read in the books and the way that it came down. And from that reading of it, I didn't get the idea that Filip had done anything wrong or even did anything that someone else wouldn't do exactly the same if they were in his seat. But I could be wrong.
Okay, I think that about covers it for that part. I think we can get to, I think, the most juicy part of the episode, because Marco gets a message from Medina Station. They say they're pleased to report that RSRG-6 was just received at Laconia ring gates. Operational testing will commence as soon as possible, and they will, of course, keep Marco fully apprised. They say if this one performs as well as the others, it will be fun, and we see that what they're talking about on the screen. If you can bring that up, Pete. This one.
Mm-hmm.
I think we discussed this earlier, because you can't really talk that much about this because you've read the books, you know what it is. But for me, this doesn't look like a ship, because ships in the Expanse universe don't really look like this. So I don't think this one is a ship. I said to you that it looks more like a weapon, maybe that they can plant on something. But I'm still, theorizing here. I don't have any clue what's going on. But I just noticed that it doesn't have a drive plume that the ships usually have. That's why I have that theory. I think it's a weapon.
Yeah, like you said, I can't really comment too much on it, but I would just add that having read the books and knowing what's going on there, I was still a little bit confused whenever I saw these scenes, because there was mention of the installation. They were having problems with installation from things that they were getting from Laconia. That was Rosenfeld told Marco that in a couple episodes ago. And so that part is clear, right? There's something's coming from Laconia, and this feels like it's going to strengthen his position.
Yeah.
You see little, as far as the drive plume, you see that it's actually a bunch of little torch drives, like those little tugs that they used, like when we saw them recover the behemoth after when it was the Naboo and it was sent after Eros and things like that. You know what I mean? It looks like they're moving this thing that way. But a lot of people saw this and they thought that it was a ship. So it's hard to say, you know what I mean? Like that's the part I was like, when I watched it the first time, I knew what they were delivering or whatever, and I wasn't exactly sure what they were showing us was happening here, because the thing about the Medina storyline is that it's just been cut from the show. It's been presented as a mystery, like we don't know what's going on there. Whereas in the books, there's different characters, and it's still a mystery in the sense that it doesn't follow one point of view character. It bounces from one, every chapter, it's a different one. So the different people are putting the story together. So I guess here, we're having that same kind of experience of like, we know something's going on there, but we don't know what it is. And I mean, like I said before, I think that what you're saying, that sounds like a reasonable conclusion to come to. I don't know what people are saying in the chat, if they are thinking about a different way.
One of them makes a lot of sense, but maybe people don't want to hear it because it sounds like it's right. Because the initials spell something out, and one of our commenters, I think, figured something out there.
I see that now too. It's like I said in the recap, that is something that could help you put it together. That RSRG.
Yeah.
And also the opening credits scene, there is, there's been something that's been changing in that every week, and it kind of maybe would help you figure out how that works.
Yeah, but taking a step back, I think Marco's end goal here is to control the ring gates rather than the belt stations themselves. And he's made it clear that he doesn't really care that much about certain stations. He doesn't care a lot about the belter people either. And maybe, controlling the ring gates is his ultimate goal. That's what he's been trying to figure out this whole time. how he could constantly defend them. And maybe these shipments they're talking about are weapons to take control of the ring gates. I mean, they have control, I think, but to retain control, I suppose.
Yeah, and it kind of comes back to that Sauveterre. Whenever Sauveterre was having that speech in last season where he was talking about how you could control the choke point at the ring, how it's, it's definitely something that if you could set it up correctly, then you could control all traffic through there with a pretty small force could control that, that being able to go through there or not against a very large force, you know what I mean? So it's something to think about for a place for him to, by proximity, it's way out there in space, right? So he can always fall back to that if he needs to or whatever. And, yeah, I think that what you said is true. He doesn't really care about all the other stations and the people, at least that's what he's showing us, right? But there's also there's definitely a strategic reason for him to focus on the ring regardless, even if he does care about those people and he does care about the other stations. That's one of the takeaways from season 5 is how important that the slow zone really is, right?
Yeah, and like you said, even if he cares about the Belter people, he would want to control the ring gate, because maybe this would allow the Belter people to have an actual planet to live on. That might be their future, because the Sol system is, from what it looks like on the show, the Sol system is dying out. Everybody's becoming Belters. It's not a life. It's not a life you want to live, really.
Yeah, and there's just a couple of things to keep in mind when you think about that. The first is the idea that Earth is dying, but the thing about it is that all these other planets exist, but you still need that's part of what we're seeing on Laconia, right? They can't go to Laconia and just plant a garden and eat the food and the plants and the animals that are already there. All of that it doesn't mesh with our chemistry. Our the way we evolved and the way things evolved there is incompatible. So that whole thing with being able to control all those worlds is one thing, but you still have they're still tethered to Earth for certain things, no matter what, because that's where we came from, right?
Yeah, that makes sense.
So yeah, so that's one thing to think about. Like, you can't just shut down the Sol. You can't just shut down Sol Ring, or if it's possible, I don't even know, but to destroy it in some way, and just go, okay, we're gonna hang out in these other places. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You can't just civilization can't just move on without Earth at all. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. So there's that to think about, but controlling that is huge because there's a ton of resources there, and that's really power for them in a way that they wouldn't have otherwise, because they could never negotiate with the power that controlled the belt before, the corporations and the governments that were on their side, because they were relying on them for their resources and that income and everything else. So it's a pretty cool setup for the last half of the season, I think.
Yeah, and as we start to give our final thoughts on the episode, I think people can start sending their questions.
If you guys have questions,
we can answer
start
a few
looking
of them.
For those. Yeah, so I think we were in agreement that this is probably the best episode so far this season.
Easily.
See, episode 2 and episode 3 were a pretty good 1-2 punch. It's sort of kind of like the low stakes battle with the Azor dragon comparatively, you know what I mean? Like, you kind of felt like they were going to win that one, because of Bobbie and her skills, and because there wasn't the same kind of thing. And then this time we get the one that you feel like they might actually lose if it wasn't a TV show and they weren't the stars, right?
Yeah, exactly. And having Marco talk to Holden, that scene was just exquisite. There was nothing like that in episode 2 or episode 1. So that's what sets episode 3 apart.
With Clarissa, you mean?
No, sorry. I wanted to say Marco and Holden coming face to face, even though it's through a screen. That moment Absolutely. Was just incredible. The way, like we said, the way Marco just said James Holden, it was just chilling. So I think this was the best episode of the season so far. And this is when I stopped watching the screeners, because I didn't want to just finish the whole season in one sitting. We had access to all 6 episodes, you and I. But I stopped at episode 3 because I wanted to, I guess, prolong my enjoyment of the show. I decided to watch week to week. But yeah, I think this was the best episode of the season so far. It was probably, one of the best episodes since the show went over to Amazon, to be perfectly honest.
I think that's definitely fair. I would say that, like I said, I kind of hate ranking things because of the recency of it all, but it was definitely a solid episode. I can't think of anything that I didn't like about it. It was pretty much start to finish. Everything was awesome all the way through. I had this question I pulled up here. I keep hearing this a lot. People are curious as to the point of the Laconia stuff, if this is the end. It's taking up a lot of time in the episode, and we talked about this a little bit last week. And I think that it's not an easy question to answer. I made a video about this before the season came out, before I saw any of it, and just like why I thought they were doing it, and that turned out to be right. I think I had the idea that I think I got to the idea that I would say here, and it's that this is. It's more important story-wise. The Laconia stuff is more important towards the end. It does, though, tie into what's happening now. It does provide some answers as to where those people went out when at the end of last season, those Martians who went through the ring. And I think that there is a payoff as far as the regular story is concerned. But I think the big thing about the Laconia stuff is that it shows us they can't end the protomolecule story in this 6th season. They couldn't do that. They have 3 really great detailed books that have a lot of different progression towards getting to that answer. And I think whenever that's the case, there's no way that they could have wrapped that up. I think what you need to do then is you have to ask the question, what are people going to do with this thing? This protomolecule thing that drove so much of the story early on. You have to address, like, you can't just say it doesn't exist in this part of the story, so we're not going to bring it up. What Laconia does is it shows a group of people who are still trying to utilize the protomolecule to their advantage. And so, I can't really say anything else beyond that because of spoilers, but I think that's the reason why it works. And I like I said, we talked about this last week. I feel like I understand when people say that it's taking up time from the main story, because it is literally doing that,
Yeah.
But I think that if they just didn't address the protomolecule at all, that would probably be much worse, don't you think?
Yeah, exactly. And I kind of got that sentiment up until episode 3, but what we saw here with the strange dog fixing a living thing and a drone, I think that makes this storyline a lot more interesting. I wondered about the point of the Laconia stuff up until episode 3, but now it seems pretty crucial for the future of the universe. I mean, if the strange dog is as powerful as it seems.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I mean, this is something that's going on there is related to the fact that they brought the protomolecule through the ring gate at the end of the season. You know, remember in the finale, Avasarala says, "Why would they take the protomolecule there, knowing what happened on Illis?" And they're taking it there because they know what happened on Illis. They want to see what they can do with it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and we know that
that's heavily implied at this point. And so now we're starting to see that what might happen, what might go right, what might go wrong. You know what I mean? They have Cortazar. He is the man who knows as much about it as anyone does, right? It's not like they're just going in blind, not knowing they have it, but you know, it's an interesting thing. And we got another question. Does it feel that the protomolecule is left out of the plot for so long in the books too? And yeah, absolutely. This is a pretty one-to-one adaptation in that regard. Actually, there's more protomolecule in season 6 than there is in book 6 because they're adding Strange Dogs. Strange Dogs is a novella. It's not part of the regular story. It's once the first part of, like, if you think of the books, they're broken up into like 1 and 2 to go together, 3 and 4 go together, and 5 and 6 go together, and then the last 3 are a trilogy. So in 5 and 6, it takes the protomolecule takes a back seat because its existence made it possible for this breakaway fleet to take off from Mars whenever it started falling apart. And it gave us, it created a situation where a guy like Marco could really actually cause problems for the status quo, for the way that things have always been inside the inner planets. And a war broke out and they have to deal with that. So that part isn't different at all between books to show.
Yeah, from what it sounds like, it does make a lot of sense in the grand scheme of things. So
yeah, it's not ideal because you don't get to see those. There's no guarantee that we'll get to see that trilogy as TV show or movies or whatever. But I mean, it's the natural progression of the story. They started out telling us a story about the relations between the 3 different factions inside the inner planets before there was rings and before there was the possibility of going to all these places. So I guess they have to tie that up before they can move on to that next level of the story. Gina Bonina asks if Bobbie is flirting with Amos. I have seen a lot of people say that. A lot of people thought that was happening. Because I read the books and I know the characters, it wasn't something that crossed my mind. I thought like there was playfulness. I thought it was more, I interpreted it more as like, these are 2 badasses that are testing each other a little bit more than, this is a man and a woman that are checking each other out or whatever. But they have chemistry. That part's for sure. You know what I mean? Like I can see where you would come up with that. What did you think? I can't remember what you said.
Yeah, last week I said, I think I brought this point up last week, and I definitely felt like there was some tension there, let's say, but I don't think I think it was just the writers, basically winking at us, just having a bit of fun. I don't think it's gonna actually turn into a real relationship or anything. So
yeah, I think, I mean, I think they probably wanted to have it be playful, and there's flirting, like actual flirting, but I don't know if it's supposed to be that you think that maybe they're going to be a love interest or whatever. You know what I mean?
Yep.
I meant to say something about this at the beginning, so I was wanting to pull up this question here. Will there be a sequel as rumored? There was a thing going around where I saw in the comments after I put out my last video that people said, "Oh, I saw online that they're doing another season and a movie," and that Ty and the official James S.A. Corey account did debunk that. He said that was completely made up. There was nothing of substance that article was based on, and he would know. You know what I mean? So
like I said earlier in the stream. Like I said earlier in the stream, the internet is the most trustworthy place in this whole world. So believe everything you see. Don't believe Pete or Ty. I'm just kidding.
just the internet. It's definitely right.
Yeah, but I wish it was true, though. I mean,
yeah, absolutely. I don't know. I think that I used to think that it was for sure going to happen, like it was inevitable. As we've gotten closer to the actual end, I don't know that I feel like we would have already heard about it now, or we would by the, like, I guess one of the things that I really held on to was the idea that there was a couple of interviews with the writers, Daniel and Ty, and then there was a couple with the actors, especially Wes and Dominique. They did a couple right around season 5 that made it seem like they knew something was going to happen, and they just couldn't say it, And I don't feel that is. That doesn't really give me hope anymore. I think that was just me seeing what I wanted to see. I think that it would be pretty surprising if such a successful thing, and we talked about this last week, so I don't want to go on about it too much, but I think it's surprising that something that's this good and that is complete and that people already like it, it's kind of surprising that somebody wouldn't make that, but I don't think there's any plans to do it right now.
The amazing Jennifer says, wonder how much it would be to crowdsource Expanse. And I want to say that one person, a single person, can crowdsource the Expanse, the rest of the Expanse, all 3 seasons. And his name, he claims to be a fan. His name is Jeff Bezos. If you want to crowdsource the Expanse, go ahead, man. Come on. But seriously, we can't crowdsource the Expanse. I mean, that would be insane.
Yeah, the way that this is going to come back is if somebody some producers get together and they have hundreds of millions of dollars that they need to throw at something, and it's the right place at the right time that it's there. You know what I mean? You are talking about hundreds of millions, and I think that something that to keep in mind is something that came up before around this time in season 5 was that Amazon has the exclusive streaming rights to the whole series for a period of time, and then those rights go back to Alcon. You know what I mean? Nobody's probably going to pick it up until they get those rights back, because you wouldn't want to have, say if you were Apple TV, you wouldn't want to bring out this show that has season 7 coming soon, and if you want to watch the other 6 seasons, go over to Amazon and watch them there first and then come back to our platform. It's that's not how that works, right?
Yeah. And do you know how many years they've got the Expanse for? Amazon.
They didn't say that explicitly. I think the way that he said it, I think they said that it was a couple of years, I think is the way the quote went. But
that would be interesting.
I don't think they had specifics, but I that's the way that I took it. It was maybe 2 or 3 more years until they went back up. And then, you see shows like this, they bounce around to where they're streaming all the time. Same with movies,
Yeah. And Motop asks, is it not making money? The production value is better than anything else out there. It's almost like they spend too much. And I just wanted to say that this is one of the more frustrating things with streaming, because we don't get any reliable numbers about how many people watch certain shows or movies. TV has that advantage. You can actually see the ratings, and if the ratings are good, your advertisers are going to pay well and the show's going to live on. But with streaming, this is a problem.
Yeah, and it makes it almost impossible to understand. Like, the metrics aren't really about money. It's about bringing people in and having them subscribe, not advertisers, like you said, right? It's a pretty cut and dry process if it's a network TV show or a cable show. If people aren't paying to put ads on there, then they can't afford to actually produce it anymore. Or they could put something else in that slot that would earn better. Here, you're looking at like a streaming service. They want a show that's going to get people who never signed up before to come and sign up for their for that. And how do you even really cover that? You know what I mean? You pay attention to the first thing someone watches when they sign up. It's really just like, I'm sure they have a good way of doing it, because that's like, that's why they exist or whatever. But like, it's really hard for us as viewers, as people who are just like consuming the thing, to tell if it's successful or not. Like, obviously it's popular compared to other things in that same genre. But the question is more of like, is it doing the thing for the streaming service that they want it to do, more than is it entertaining people, right?
Yeah, agreed. And the amazing Jennifer with another question says, is this a new format for Pete? I think you can answer that one, Pete.
Like the stream, is that what the question is? Is that
I think so.
Yeah, this is our second one. Hopefully we did a little bit better this time, and next week we'll do number 3, and hopefully that'll go a little bit smoother still.
I think this is a good time as any to wrap things up, Pete. It's getting pretty late out here.
Yeah, definitely. I just was reading these last couple ones. I just wanted to thank everybody for participating, and sorry that I can't look at everything. I'm still trying to sort this out. I felt a lot better this time than I did last time, so I'm going to continue to try to get better at that. Try to watch the chat while we're going. But it's great to see people coming, and it's great to have the opportunity to talk about this stuff more, because I tried to do a pretty tight recap and hit the important parts, but I don't, I can't make those an hour long, because it takes so long to edit it together. So it's nice to have a chance to see what you guys are saying. Like, I read all the comments before I come in here, and then have someone to talk about it with and dig into the more interesting stuff in a way. So thanks a lot for coming out, and thanks for helping out. Benja, do you want to say anything before we go?
Yeah, no problem, Pete. It's good to be here, and I think we'll do 3 more of these before the season ends. So I'm really excited about those. You can check out my channel over at Benja TV. My name is should be written somewhere around here. Is it not? I'm not sure, but it's Benja TV. I cover some shows on my channel, including The Expanse, but I'm only going to cover episode 6 of the season. I started covering 1883 recently. That's a Western drama that came out recently. And yeah, that's about it. Thank you for coming out, guys, and joining the stream. It's been fun.
Yep. And there's a sub link in the description, so check that out, and hopefully you'll all be able to come back. The one thing I did want to mention is we are thinking about maybe moving this to Saturday. It's been the holidays, so we haven't been able to pin down when the best time to do it would be. It would be a little bit earlier in the week. So after I close this out, just mention in the comments if you think that would be a good idea, as far as instead of doing it on what is Monday night on the East Coast, if we did that a couple of days earlier or something like that. Just let us know what you think would be the best time. And once again, thanks for coming out. Thanks for listening to us talk and contributing here in the chat, and we'll talk to you soon.